So the story goes as follows. It's a story about a fellow. His name was Moshe, and Moshe was a movie star, but the industry wasn't very busy. He couldn't get any jobs. He was an okay actor, but he couldn't get a job. So he worked. He looked in the classified section of the newspapers. That's what they used to do in the olden days. He looked online, find a job, and he can't find this acting position. So one place says, yeah, we have a job for an actor. So he goes for the interview for the job, and he arrives, and the guy says, look, we have a very interesting job for you. You know, we run a zoo, and we heard that you're an actor, so we have a job for you. Can you act like a monkey? Says, it's tough to make a living. We'll do what it takes. So he says, okay, so I'll act as a monkey. He says, okay, you come show up tomorrow, first day of work, and make sure to come with a nice monkey costume. So he goes, gets a monkey costume, he arrives in the zoo, and the zookeeper tells him, we have problems with business here, we don't have a lot of money, and our monkey passed away, Olav Shalom, and we can't afford another monkey, so we thought we'll take an actor instead of the monkey. So they take him and they say, your job is to act like a monkey. When the kids come, make sure to entertain them, jump up and eat the when they throw some food, eat it, and you climb on the trees and act like a monkey. So sure, he goes in, Moshe, you have to make a parnusa. You have to make a living, So Jews always knew you do whatever it takes. So he jumps into the cage. In the morning, the zoo opens up and all the kids come. Oh, the monkey. Kid says, start throwing things at him. And he starts doing, the monkey jumping from one branch to another. He was making monkey faces to them, jumping and spitting and fighting, and he's jumping, making flips. And the kids took a liking to this monkey. This monkey is very creative. He's a good actor, Moshe, so he acted like a real good monkey. And one kid said to him, come, the funniest monkey there. We've never seen a monkey like this. And before you know it, everybody's there, the whole zoo, everybody's coming to watch the monkey. And the Moshe is very proud of himself. I mean, it's not a very good paying job, but he's doing a good job. And at the end of the day, the zookeeper says to him, oh, you're doing such a job, we'll give you a raise. And the next day he started doing the work again. And from day to day, every day, the more people started coming to the zoo. In the zoo, there was a dead zoo. Everybody heard about this new monkey. Little did they know, the people, that there was a little human inside called Moshe. He was inside the costume. And one day he got up and he was doing these flips and double flips and triple flips, and boom, he flies so high that he flies over the cage and he falls into the next cage. The next cage was the lion's cage. Oh, how much was in trouble. He gets up, he falls on the floor and he gives a look. And everybody's cheering, and from the other cage, oh, come to look now, the other place there. Moshe gives a look. He's standing in front of a ferocious lion. And the lion is there, and he's roaring. Moshe says, that's the end of my life. It was a good gig as long as I had it, but now the lion's going to gobble me up. And he wasn't such a good climber that he could climb back over into the... Standing in front of the lion's looking at him point blank right in his face, and he's looking at the lion, they're looking at each other. And Moshe, he was an actor, but he was a good Jew. He knew he was in trouble. His life was over. He didn't know what will be with him now. So what does a Jew do when he's in trouble? He says Shema Yisrael. So Moshe gives a shout out, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. And he's ready for the lion to gobble him up. And the lion responds, Baruch Shem Kivod Malchuto Li'olam Va'ed. The lion was also an actor, I guess. So he also responded, Baruch Shem Kivod Malchuto Li'olam Va'ed. And meanwhile, while this is all going on, in the next cage, the bear gives a look what's going on. He says, quiet, both of you, or we'll all lose our job quickly. So the bear was also a fake. It was also an imposter. So what's the point of the story? When you say Shema Yisrael with all your heart and all your soul, even if he looks like a lion's in front of you, the lion will respond, Baruch Shem Kivod Malchuto. There's always hope. And the bear also, he's underneath the whole bear costume. He's really also a good actor, a good yid that's there. And life has just a lot of costumes and a lot of externals, but the internal is great. The reason why I tell you the story today, why am I telling you the story, besides for the comical value of the story, it's because we were studying last week together. We're learning now in the Shiur. We're studying the Genesis. We're studying Bereshit. We're studying the Kabbalistic spin on the creation of the world. And we're talking about the creation of man. And last week, we touched on the creation of woman. And Adam and Eve, obviously, they were the first man and woman. That's what we were discussing. So it says, we spoke last week about Adam's loneliness, that he was lonely, and God said, we'll solve your loneliness because it's lo tov, it's not good to be alone. And he created a woman for him from his rib, cut the rib in half, right? Remember we spoke about its possibility that Adam and Eve were an androgynous creature, right? Male, female. God split them in half, and now you have the male and the female. Last week we went on in a whole long explanation according to the Kabbalah that Adam and Eve being split is really on a deeper level. It's not just on a physical level, but really it's also on a soul level. Because every couple that gets married, not only do the bodies of the man and the female come from one body originally, from the body of Adam and Eve, but they're even more connected on a soul level. Every soul is like a split. But the soul, before it comes down to this world, it's really a he, she, it's a male-female creature, and God cuts the body in half. As well, he cuts the soul in half. Because it has a soul, and he sees over there is Yankel and Rochela, right? That the souls, and he splits them in half, and he throws them down into this world, and he says, okay, you're going into separate bodies, and now you have to find each other. Hence the concept of soul mates. And that's why at a wedding, we're so excited, so happy, because half a soul meets half soul, and they come together. Because really a husband and a wife are really like one thing. They're one soul, they're bashert. And when you marry someone, you're not just marrying the physical part, you're also marrying the spiritual part. That's why I always tell the brides and the grooms, when they get married, one of the most beautiful things is a ceremony called the Badekanish. The Badekanish is the covering on the veil. You place the veil on the bride's face. And many people ask, what sort of thing is this? Why do we place a veil over the Kala's face? You would think the opposite. The whole reason why the bride and groom go to see each other before the wedding is that they shouldn't be duped. They should know who they're marrying. They just see, right? They just be able to see who's marrying who. You have to know who you're marrying. It says it's forbidden for a man to marry a woman without seeing her first. So why does he place a veil over her face? It should be the opposite. He should unveil the Kala. I know that there's another ceremony that we know that's known as the unveiling. which that's for the afterlife, at the end, after 120, there's a thing called the unveiling. So maybe they don't want to make the ceremony of the bride and the groom an unveiling ceremony. But that's just sort of, it makes no sense. Why wouldn't we unveil the Kala instead of veiling her? And the answer is that there's a reason for veiling. Veiling comes to teach us, comes to tell us that when you marry someone, you're not marrying their externals, you're marrying their internal, you're marrying their soul. So it seems like a bride and the groom are marrying the bodies. They love each other, they like each other. What do they like? They like the body. They fall in love with the body. But really, on a deeper level, it's not the body that you're marrying. What you're marrying is the soul. And you're marrying each other because you're soulmates. So that's what's happening over here. The Kala is unveiled. Not unveiled, she's veiled to teach us that the body is not what he's marrying. What is he marrying? He's marrying a soul. He's marrying a soul that he knows already for a long time. Last week we spoke also at great length about the shared destiny of two souls. They're one soul, so they really have one destiny. And sometimes the suffering that one soul has, remember we spoke about it last week, really belong to the other soul. They really belong, they're like a team. I always tell the brides and the grooms about how important is shared meaning, shared purpose, shared destiny. Two people who get married, what they're really is they're buying into one destiny, or they're revealing the destiny that they have for each other, because they're really one. I know we ask questions about how is that possible if you have some people remarry, and so how is it a soulmate? And we spoke last week about puzzle pieces. I gave you a little bit of an understanding of how the puzzle pieces work. Sometimes one piece can have a few possible mates. But there is the primary soulmate, and that's who we try to find in our life, that soulmate. So this is where we come today to the Torah says, a man shall leave his father or mother and cleave unto woman, and they shall become one flesh. So let's look at that verse a little bit more, a little bit deeper. Therefore, a man shall leave his father or mother and cleave unto his wife. Here you have actually a prohibition on incest on a simple level. Shall leave the father and mother. That means you're not allowed to have relations with the father and mother, albeit nutty, but sometimes it could be a stepmother, or the other kind of things, right? It could be a half mother, half father. Right? Therefore, they shall leave the incestuous relationship. Talmud says that this also is not just for father and mother. It also applies to brother and sister. It also applies to other close relations that we're not allowed to have relations with, and they should leave, and he shall cleave unto a stranger woman. Mind you, Adam and Eve were also pretty much almost like brother and sister, because they came from one rib, right? So they're pretty close, Adam and Eve. That maybe explains why we have so many problems in the world. We all come from this kind of interesting relationship. But the Torah says, therefore a man shall leave the father and mother, leave the family unit, and find a strange woman and become with her one flesh. Many couples, they have issues when they first get married. There's always like a lot of issues in the first year, especially. There's till you adjust, till you become, understand how to deal with each other. And there are a lot of issues that couples have till they learn how to deal with issues. And one of the big issues that we find in many couples is a tug of war, so to speak, between the wife and the mother. between the husband and the father. Because, true, if it's a good child, they would have great loyalty to the parent. They have great loyalty to the father and mother. That's a usual thing. A good child will be loyal to the parents. And then they're told to get married and be loyal to the wife. And to give over yourself to your spouse, husband or wife, right? Give over yourself over to your husband, give yourself over to your wife, to your spouse. You have to be loyal to them. And then the question is, which always is right at the beginning of marriage, especially, what do you do now? Now you have two loyalties. You have loyalty to your parents, and you have loyalty to the spouse. So in many cases, there's no conflict. But very often there are conflicts. Spend more time with me. What are you always going to your parents? Or why are you always with your wife? We never see you. Or why are you always with your husband? Come visit us more, right? This is the tug of war sometimes that is created in marriages, and it's quite a serious issue. Because the Torah says, honor your father or mother. Very important. But the Torah says over there also in the same Torah, it says you shall honor your wife. It speaks about all the responsibilities of a husband to wife, and the wife to the husband. Simach is ishta, you should make your wife happy, your spouse happy. It says sheira ksusa v'nasa leyigra. To give each other. You have to give a lot of love. You take care of each other. So what do you do now? Stuck between a rock and a hard place, as they say. You want to give honor to your parents, and lots of times, sometimes, parents and kids, they don't know how to deal with these things. They're novice at these things, and they start making ultimatums. If you really love me, tell him or tell her or tell. All these things go on in families. Constantly, we have to deal with it in family counseling. I said, especially the first year, till a couple gets to know each other and they know how to deal with these things, how to avoid these problems. What do you do? So the answer is in this pasuk in the Torah. Torah says, first loyalty is to a spouse, even before a father or mother. That might come as a surprise to you, because the spouse is not in the Ten Commandments. Parents are in the Ten Commandments, right? But if you look carefully at what it says in the pasuk that I just read to you, therefore a man shall leave his father and mother and cleave unto his spouse. It's not just a matter of creating a family union or unit, but it's also in terms of loyalties. Therefore, the person shall leave their father and mother and cleave unto their spouse. So spousal loyalty comes before loyalty to parents. So if God forbid someone has to make a choice between the parents and that, there are ways to do it. There are ways to accomplish it. Sometimes people have to move towns or cities or houses. There are ways to be able to keep both in place. But ultimately, when the two loyalties come into place, a good parent will say to the child, your first loyalty is to your wife or to your husband. Because that's what the Torah says. You become one unit. Vayula vasat echad. And you should become one flesh. It doesn't say one flesh for the parents. It says one flesh for the spouse. It's like I say, it's a hard thing. It's a hard pill to swallow sometimes, and smart people can usually take care of both in a way that everybody's satisfied. But when push comes to shove, and you come to a situation where there's a real clash between the two most important loves that we have in life, the spouse wins. Azay state, this is what it says in the holy books. So I'm telling you what it says. But then it says, Vayu levasar echad, you shall be one flesh. What does it mean there should be one flesh? God just separated Adam from Eve. Then he says, now leave the parents and become one flesh. What does it mean, one flesh? And the reason why I mentioned the story at the beginning of the whole story here, it's interesting that echad is the same word that's used as the same word in Shema. Shema Yisrael, you say, hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. So we need to become one with God. Hashem is one. We're one with God on a spiritual level. We have oneness with God. And that's what we all have to strive for in the spiritual life, to get closer and closer to God and become swallowed up in the oneness of God. One is Hashem. But, sometimes we have different ideas. So our job in life is to align our will to His will. Almost like in a relationship. We have our desires, God has His desires. And Vahayu Levasar Echad teaches us that husband and wife have to align themselves. They have to become one. Hence the concept of Shalom Bayis. We need to have harmony, peace in the home. Peace in the home is very important. And it takes a lifetime sometimes to figure out how to align oneself mentally, emotionally with a spouse. Like our job with God, it says you need to sometimes surrender yourself to God. There was a book written a while ago called The Surrendered Wife. It's a woman, a secular woman, she says she feels that the only way that a marriage can work is when people surrender their ego. That's the only way it can work. Like with God, we need to surrender our will to His will, align our will to His will. Sometimes that takes a bit of humility. We need to humble ourselves before Hashem. We need to humble ourselves before our spouse. And that you can't come into a marriage with my way or the highway. You have to have humility. You have to be ready sometimes to give it up. Like it works in everything in life. If you have two people, two egos that clash, it doesn't work. One person has to sometimes compromise. The first thing you do when you come into a Jewish home, you have to think about compromise. How can I compromise today to make the marriage work? I always tell the brides and grooms about the mezuzah. The mezuzah, right, when you come into the house, first thing you remind yourself when you come into the house is the mezuzah. Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. That we become one with God. We have to surrender ourselves to God. We have to come in humility before God and to realize that Hashem is one. Not two, one. So in order to be one with Hashem, you need sometimes to humble yourself before God. Same thing is with a spouse. If you want to make a marriage work, one needs to give it up, as they say. Humble oneself. And I heard once again a beautiful explanation. Why is the mezuzah right when you come into the house? Look at the mezuzah. Of course, you have to think about the oneness, echad, which we said before. V'hayu levasar echad, there should be one flesh. But also, why is the mezuzah placed on an angle? In most of the Ashkenazic homes, at least, that's the custom. The mezuzah is always on an angle. Why is it on an angle? Because in a marriage, there's always an angle. You have to always, when you come into the house, you have to you have to have an angle to everything. Otherwise, if you're just going to go in straight, and you can go my way or the highway, it's not going to work. You need to compromise a little bit of an angle. And the story goes that in the Talmud, you have all the famous commentators, Rashi and Rambam. They have an argument as to which way a mezuzah should be placed. One opinion was, for many years, was an opinion that a mezuzah should be vertical, and there was another opinion that said a mezuzah should be horizontal. So it's two opinions. In the old days, there were some people used to play. Torah says, place the mezuzah on your door. Some people place it like horizontal, like straight. We don't have that custom anymore. But that was the debate, whether to leave the mezuzah straight up or to place it horizontally. How do we place the mezuzah? We place the mezuzah upwards, but at an angle. So it's like a little bit straight up and a little bit vertical, a little bit horizontal. Why? This was the compromise that was made amongst the rabbis, that every opinion can be validated. Every opinion can be correct. And so when you look at the mezuzah, you see the rabbis that said vertical, and you also see the rabbis that said horizontal. So when you come through the door of the house, you say to yourself, why is my mezuzah crooked? You say to yourself, if the rabbis who were always right, they always felt they were right, and they came to a conclusion, a compromise to make a little bit vertical, a little bit horizontal, and we both could be right. So us simple people, we come home, we also have to think along those lines. If you want to make the work, it has to be echad, oneness. How do you make one, black and white? You have to sort of find the angle. It's like the rabbi, this famous rabbi, was sitting in his place, and a man and a wife came in, and the Rebbitzin is listening. The Rebbitzin is listening to the conversation. They come in for counseling, and the woman said her case against her husband's making problems. He doesn't make a living, and he's no good. The rabbi says, "You're 100% right." And then the husband got up and he said his case, and the whole thing. And the rabbi says, "You're 100% right." So the Rebbitzin who's watching this whole thing, she says, Rabbi, how could you say they're both right? You say she's right, you say he's right. The rabbi says to the Rebbitzin, "You're also right." So everyone's a little bit right. But sometimes that's what you need to do. You need to validate everybody, you need to give everybody their right, but not completely right. So you make a compromise that way, This "you're also right" philosophy and the mezuzah philosophy, maybe we have to bring to the Middle East to work it out, because there's a lot of problems going on in the world, and sometimes this "you are also right" philosophy, the compromise philosophy in a marriage. So this is what the Hayu Levasar Echad, they become one flesh. How does it work? It works surrendered wife, surrendered husbands. Both together are compromising their opinions, and through that they can. So this is the Hayu Levasar Echad, and please God, we will continue more on these ideas of the man and the woman, and good marriages, and soulmates, soul body mates, and half, and these are the ideas of Hayu Levasar Echad. But I just want to say, I forgot one very important point before we conclude the class, is that's what we think about. Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. The oneness of God in us is similar to the Hayu Levasar Echad, the oneness of the husband and the wife. That when they're half souls, humble themselves and compromise themselves, and then go back as one, with that you reveal the presence of Hashem in the family life. Because when you give it up for each other, Hashem also gives it up for us, and then we were able to achieve the oneness. Two half souls become one soul. That draws down a greater entity, which is the oneness with Hashem. Okay? Any questions today in today's class? Anyone?
Very interesting as usual, Rabbi.
Always a pleasure. Eddie, how are you?
Good, thanks, and you.
Baruch Hashem.
Sorry I came in late. I couldn't connect.
Yes,
I
I
don't know
see
why.
you. I see Mr. Markman. How are you?
Thank you, Rabbi. I thank Eddie for telling me about this class.
Yeah.
I hope you
You're
don't
always
mind if I
welcome.
join.
We're here every Thursday morning at 11 o'clock.
And
We'd
do you
love
mind
to
if
have
I
you.
join the class?
Yeah, please. You'll be an honorary member.
Thank you very much.
Basil, how is Basil feeling? Basil, you good? Basil?
Is muted.
Yeah, it's fine. We know he's saying good things. Not to worry. Okay, so wish everybody a good Shabbos. Helga, wish you good Shabbos.
Good service.
Shabbos,
Everybody.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Rabbi.
Thank you.
Nice to have
Thank you.
everybody here. Okay, all the best.
Thank you.
See you next week.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.